Hey, what's up everybody? GameDad here, coming at you guys with part 2 of my current Atari 2600 collection. So, let's check out what we got. Up first, we have Dolphin, released in 1983 by Activision. Now, in this game, you play as a dolphin that is trying to outrun an octopus. Now, I found the barriers a little bit annoying in this game, but overall, I had a good time. I thought this game was pretty fun. Up next, we have Donkey Kong Jr., originally released in 1981 by Nintendo of America. The Atari 2600 version was released in 1983 by Coleco Industries, and considering the hardware it was running on, it's actually a pretty decent port. Next, we have Dragster, released in 1980 by Activision. Now, this game has been a topic of conversation in recent months due to Todd Rogers having his world record score of 5.51 removed due to it being an impossibility within the game. Here we have Enduro, released in 1983 by Activision. In this classic racing game, you have to dodge other vehicles while driving down the road at breakneck speeds. This game reminds me of an early version of Outrun. Released in 1982 by Fox Video Games, Fantastic Voyage is a space adventure style game where you must avoid the walls and projectiles in your path along the way to the finish. Released in 1982 by Imagic, Firefighter is a fun little game where you play as a lone firefighter trying to put out a building fire in order to save the people inside. Firefly was released in 1983 by Mythicon. In this Space Invader style game, you actually take a side-scrolling approach to the genre to continue through the game and reach the end. Released in 1988 by Atari, Football is more accurately a soccer-style game. You play the game as part of a 3-person team going head-to-head with the opposing team until the time runs out. Frankenstein's Monster was released in 1983 by Data Age. In this game, you have to traverse through the floors of the castle to collect the items necessary to complete the stage. In 1981, Activision released Freeway. In this Frogger-style game, you must move your character to the other side of the freeway without getting hit by the oncoming traffic that is moving at various speeds. Next up is Frontline, released in 1982 by Taito. In this military-style shooter game, you must start out by traversing through the jungle and defeating enemies coming at you from all sides. Next is another space shooter that reminds me of Space Invaders with more colors. Released in 1983 by Bally Midway, Galaxian is another fun arcade port addition to my Atari 2600 collection. Up next is Grand Prix. This Enduro meets Dragster crossover was released in 1982 by Activision and was a lot of fun to capture footage for. I found myself trying over and over to get a higher score and just get a little bit further in the game. Now here we have Haunted House, released by Atari in 1981. In this game, you play as a set of eyes that is wandering around in the dark looking for clues and trying to avoid enemies. While frustrating at times, I found this game to actually be quite entertaining. Up next is Home Run, released by Atari in 1978. Unfortunately, this was a title that, while playable on my Atari 2600, did not appear to work on my Retron 77. Next up is Human Cannonball. Released by Atari in 1979, you play as the operator of a large cannon that is going to shoot a person out of the barrel. You must find the right angle to match with the wind speed so that you can get the person to safely land in the net on the other side of the screen. Released in 1981 by Activision, Ice Hockey is a 2-on-2 matchup on the ice. Depending on where the puck is, you will either be playing as the goalie or trying to score on your opponent. Although it took me a few tries, I had a lot of fun once I had it figured out. Next up is Journey Escape, released by Data Age in 1982. In this game, you play as a small character trying to navigate your way through a maze of enemies that keep spawning to block your path. I wasn't actually a huge fan of this game as it felt pretty monotonous. Next is an absolute classic. Released by Williams in 1982, Joust is one of my favorite games from this era. The concept alone is something that would draw people in. How the creators thought of knights riding ostriches while jousting is beyond me, but it somehow works. Next is another Pac-Man clone. Junior Pac-Man was released in 1986 by Bally Midway. While I can honestly say it played a lot better than the normal Pac-Man game on the 2600, it just didn't do it for me. I'll take the arcade Pac-Man any day over the 2600 versions. Here we have Jungle Hunt. This game was released in 1982 by Taito and reminds me very much of Pitfall with its vine swinging and jungle running. I actually had a lot of fun with this game. It has light gameplay and fun colors. Before I knew it, I was already playing this game for over an hour. Being a martial artist myself, I had to have karate in my collection. Released in 1982 by Froggo Games, in this game you spar with an opponent using strikes and kicks to earn points. While the realism was obviously lacking, it was still a fun game to play. Next is Laser Blast, which was released by Activision in 1981. Unfortunately, this was another title that my Retron 77 was just unable to capture footage for. Next is Lock and Chase, released by Data East in 1982. In this Pac-Man clone, you have to run around collecting everything while avoiding the police. Once you collect everything, the door will unlock and you will be able to move on to the next level. Next up is Mad by the US Games Corporation, which was released in 1982. In this game, which reminded me a lot of Atlantis, you are trying to shoot down enemies and prevent them from bombing your bases and taking out your own weapons. Next up is another classic arcade port. Mario Bros. Was released for the Atari 2600 by Nintendo in 1983. In this game, you take out enemies by hitting the ground beneath them, then kicking them off the screen and collecting their coins. Next up is MASH, released in 1983 by Fox Video Games. In this game, you start out by piloting a helicopter and trying to get people safely back to your base. This game to me felt like a different approach to a choplifter style game. Next is Maze Craze, released by Atari in 1978. In this game, you and another player go head to head as you try to get through the maze before the other player does. I had a lot of fun playing through this game because it reminded me of doing mazes as a kid. Next up is Megaforce. This game was released by Fox Video Games in 1982. In Megaforce, you are piloting a plane that is bombing and avoiding enemies. I actually found this game to be quite challenging and found myself getting shot down quite a bit. Next up is Midnight Magic by Broderbund Software that was released in 1982. This game is a great pinball board for the Atari 2600. It admittedly took me a minute to figure out how to launch the ball, but once I got going, I really enjoyed the game. Up next is Miniature Golf, released in 1978 by Atari. This is the last game in this video that I was unfortunately unable to capture footage for. It is quite a fun game though. Up next is another absolute classic released by Atari in 1981. This is Missile Command. In this game, you must quickly launch countermeasures to defend against an incoming barrage of missiles. To add to the challenge, you can only have 2 countermeasures on screen at once. So that was another look into my current Atari 2600 collection. Now, I'll have a couple more videos for you guys in the future that'll showcase the rest of the collection. Until then, please make sure that you go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons down below, hit that notification icon, and let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Now, as always, I'm GameDad. I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you later.